Cappuccino is the most popular and the oldest milk-based coffee in the world. I have a question for you. Do you know the best way of making a cappuccino? This question sounds familiar and very popular to most of the baristas, but it's a very tricky question to answer if you're a professional barista. Let me explain. For the 6 years I've worked as a barista, I've encountered 3 different ways of making a cappuccino, and each of them is perfect depending on the coffee shop that is serving these cappuccinos. For example, if you go to a traditional Italian coffee shop, you're most likely going to be served a traditional cappuccino. And if you go into a specialty coffee shop, you're most times going to be served the modern cappuccino. And if you're someone who loves iced coffees, you can also order for an iced cappuccino. These are the 3 different types of cappuccinos that confuse most of the beginner baristas and coffee lovers. They are very tricky when you're ordering for them if you don't have the basic knowledge between these 3 different ways of making the cappuccino. So this is why I've made this video, so that I can help you know the difference between these 3 different cappuccino before you run into a conclusion on choosing which one is the best way of making the cappuccino. I'm going to share everything that you need to know about these 3 different cappuccino in 3 different steps. The first step, we're going to be talking about the amount of espresso for each of the cappuccino. The second step is going to be the type of milk texture that you're going to need when you're making any of these 3 cappuccinos. And the third step, I'm going to share with you the basic knowledge when it comes to the difference in taste between these 3 different cappuccinos. So without wasting any time, let's start with the amount of espresso. This is a very tricky topic and it's very confusing to most of the beginner barista or any person with no experience about coffee. But I've tried to simplify it the simplest way possible. One thing you're going to keep in mind, the amount of espresso can change depending on the size of cup that you're using to make your cappuccino, and also the roast profile or the type of coffee beans that you're using to make your cappuccino. But for this video, I'm using a 12-ounce cup, and I'm also using a medium roasted Brazil coffee bean for my cappuccinos. Let's start by extracting our shot of espresso. I'm grinding 20 grams as my dose of coffee beans that I'm going to use to extract my shot of espresso. For the Italian cappuccino and the modern way of making the cappuccino, I'm going to extract 30 ml of espresso. And for the iced cappuccino, since it has ice, it often becomes light. This is why I'm going to be using 40 ml of espresso. After extracting all our shots of espresso, the next is going to be the milk steaming and creating that perfect milk texture for all our cappuccinos. So for the modern cappuccino, we're going to start by adding milk into our picture, then start our steaming process. We're going to be adding in more air so that we can have more foam on our milk. This is going to enable us to make a good latte art on our cappuccino. The modern cappuccino, you're going to need to make a latte art on it. This is why modern cappuccinos are often served in specialty coffee shops, because in specialty coffee shop, latte art is a key. So if you're not good in milk steaming, I have a full guide for beginners on how you can steam milk and create that perfect milk texture. After you steam your milk, get your espresso and start mixing the milk with the espresso, then finishing up with a good latte art. This is a modern cappuccino which is well mixed, and it also has good latte art like this swan latte art on this cappuccino. Then next, let's steam our milk for the traditional Italian cappuccino. For the traditional Italian cappuccino, we are using a slightly bigger jug. So we add our milk into our jug, then start steaming our milk for the traditional cappuccino. For the traditional cappuccino, you're going to add in as much air as you can so that you can have too much foam. This is key when you're making a traditional Italian cappuccino. Latte art is not very important. The amount of foam is what's important. So inject in as much air as you can, but make sure to keep the consistency because you're going to need the foam to be also smooth. Steam your milk until you reach the desirable temperature. Then get your shot of espresso, scoop the foam and add it on top of espresso until half of the cup. Then In the center of the cup, pour the milk so that you can create 3 layers, which most people describe as 3 parts of the cappuccino, where 1 part is the espresso, 1 part is steamed milk, and 1 part is milk foam. This is the traditional way of making an Italian cappuccino. Next, we're going to be making the iced cappuccino. For the iced cappuccino, get your glass. I'm using a 13-ounce glass. Add ice into your glass. Then pour your milk until 3/3 of the glass. Add your 40 ml of espresso into the glass. Then steam little bit of milk while injecting in more air so that you can have more foam. Then scoop the foam and fill it up until the glass is full. This is how you can make an iced cappuccino. These are the 3 different ways of making a cappuccino. Let's look at the taste of each of these coffee drinks. So when you're ordering it, you will fully know what taste you're going to expect, the strength of the espresso and also the amount of the milk. Starting with the traditional cappuccino. Since the traditional cappuccino has too much foam, it's going to be the strongest amongst these 3 cappuccinos because it has very less milk, it has more foam, and also a shot of espresso. This is what makes it to be more stronger than the modern cappuccino and the iced cappuccino. And for the modern cappuccino, if you're someone who loves latte art and you want already mixed cappuccino, then the modern cappuccino is the perfect one. It's medium in taste, it's not very strong. Some coffee shops use even a single shot for this modern cappuccino. It's a well-balanced coffee drink which is ideal even for beginners. You can enjoy this modern cappuccino. For the iced cappuccino, this is unique in its own way. You can't compare it to these other 2 cappuccinos because this is perfect for those people who want iced coffees. It's an amazing coffee drink that you should try. It's not very strong, so it gives you a well balance between the espresso and the milk and also the foam which is on top. Next time, if you're ordering for a cappuccino, you will fully know the difference between each of these cappuccinos and how you can properly order them as a coffee lover or as a beginner barista. You will fully know which cappuccino you can make depending on the coffee shop that you're working for. So for the final verdict, which one is the best way of making a cappuccino? To be honest, as an experienced barista, I find it hard to specifically choose out which one is best because depending on all the coffee shops I've worked for, each of these cappuccino, whenever you serve it to the right customer, you will find it to be the best cappuccino for them. This is why I've decided to give this question back to you guys to let me know which is the best cappuccino for you. Try these 3 cappuccinos and let me know your experience in the comment section below. I'm waiting for those comments. But if you're a beginner barista, for you to fully compare these 3 cappuccinos, you need to watch this video next because it's a full guide where I explain to you the different types of milk-based coffees that contain espresso with milk.